Hey, it's Layla here. So we are just 2 weeks away from the publication of Me and White Supremacy. And so I wanted to take a little time to give you all some insight into the new book. If you will recall, Me and White Supremacy began as an Instagram challenge, a 28-day Instagram challenge that I ran on my page in the summer of 2018. It then became this. This is a printed version, but you will remember it was a PDF workbook, the Me and White Supremacy workbook. So I took the 28 days, expanded it. I didn't have to fit it into the space of an Instagram caption. I could write a whole book about it. And that's what I did. And I turned it into a PDF. It was self-published, available for free, and almost 100,000 people downloaded it. And now, in just 2 weeks' time, we have the hardcover book coming out. So this is the US version. The blue book is the US version. The orange book is the UK version. And they hit shelves in 2 weeks on the 28th of January. The book is also coming out as an ebook and as an audiobook, and those are also available for pre-order, and they will be available on the 28th of January as well. So what I wanted to do, as we're really close now to publication, is to give you all a little behind the scenes of the book. I wanted to give you a little insight. What's changed? What's new? There was quite a big jump from when it went from the Instagram challenge to the workbook, but there's also been a significant change from the workbook to the new book. The new book is actually, in terms of just word count, it's double the size. It's a much deeper book. It's a much longer book. It still keeps to the frame of the 28 days, and those 28 days are still in the same order, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But in terms of how deeply we go into each area, I've taken it a lot deeper. I've used examples from my own life, examples from pop culture and the media, examples from history, to really be able to give people a deeper understanding about what these concepts are. I know that we all learn in different ways. We need different kinds of information, whether it's statistics and facts or stories, to be able to really get the point across. And so I spent a lot of time in writing the new book, really trying to pull as much as I can from myself and the resources available to be able to really outline these topics for you. So what is today's video about? So today's video is about just giving you sort of a brief overview of how the book is laid out, and then we're going to be looking at week 1 of the book. So if you're familiar with the workbook, if you did the challenge or the workbook, you'll know that we had the challenge was broken down into 28 days, and that those 28 days really fit into 4 weeks, right? If you divide them into 7, they are 4 weeks. And so that we've kept that same format, but we've changed things around a little bit in how the entirety of the book is arranged. So what I'm going to do is go through how the entirety of the book is arranged very broadly, and then we're going to look at week 1, which is the first 7 days. Okay, and I'll be switching between the blue and the orange and showing you. And I know I have had a question, what's the difference between the two, other than the covers and the fact that they are being published in different markets? To be honest with you, the books are largely similar. There are some small changes, there are some differences, but the books are largely the same. And the reason why that is because White Supremacy isn't just a country-specific system. It's not a country-specific phenomenon. White supremacy is present all around the world. And what I wanted to be able to do is use examples from all over the world, but also really focus people on the internal reflection. How does my white privilege, as a person who holds white privilege, how does that show up regardless of where in the world I am? So the books are not massively different for that reason, because white supremacy manifests very similarly around the world, and white privilege and the way that it shows up manifests very similarly around the world. So the two books are very similar for that reason. Okay, so very brief overview. What is Me and White Supremacy about? Me and White Supremacy is a book, a process, a tool to help people with white privilege to examine, explore, examine, explore, and understand their white privilege and their complicity in the system of white supremacy. It is a tool for anti-racism. It is a tool for the practice of anti-racism. And what it helps people to do is rather than looking outside of themselves for that's the problem out there, they're the racists, that's white supremacy, and this has nothing to do with me, I'm one of the good ones. It allows everybody who holds white privilege to really examine their personal complicity in the system and therefore be able to personally make changes no matter where they are, whether it's in their family, whether it's in their schools and their communities, their clubs, their workspaces. Each person, every single person who benefits from white supremacy because of white privilege also has a responsibility and an ability to be able to create change, no matter how big or small. And what this book does is it empowers people to personally be able to understand how to do that by turning within first and really looking at how does this show up for me. So that is what this tool is. This book is it's not a book that you read. It's actually a book that you do. It's very much a practical book. There are many, many incredible books out there about anti-racism, social justice that give, whether they're memoirs, whether they're facts, whether they're nonfiction books, guidebooks. There are some incredible books out there. But what this book does is actually take that and gives you the tool to be able to practically work through as an individual or as a group. How do we actually tackle this? What does this mean for us personally? So that is what this book does. So the book is divided into two main parts. The first part one, is really an introduction to me, to this work, to a real understanding of what is actually white supremacy. Why have we called this book White Supremacy, and what does that mean? What is this actually about? And then we talk about things that, if you're familiar with the workbook, you will recall. We talk about things like, who is this book for? How do you use the book, and what you will need in order to use this book, and very importantly, self-care, support, and sustainability. Now, you'll have heard me say this before. This work is not easy. It's very, very challenging. It will bring up a lot for you, and it's really important for me that this work is something that you sustain over the long term. So that was why it was important for me to include a chapter in there on self-care and support and sustainability, because I don't want people giving up, clocking out just because it's uncomfortable. And so I give some tips around that. So that's first one, is sort of welcome to the work. Here, who am I? What is this all about? And how to do this book. And then part two is the work itself. So the 28-day process. As I said, it was 28 days, which we've broken down into these 4 weeks. And what I've done in the new book is actually outline what those 4 weeks are about. So I'm going to talk about week one, and then I'm going to do a little reading from the book so that you can get a sense of what's inside there, what to expect. So week one is called The Basics. So when I received the inspiration, the download for the Instagram challenge, I started looking at what actually is white supremacy and sort of started noting down all of these different things. Well, it's white privilege, it's white fragility, it's tone policing, it's cultural appropriation, it's racist stereotypes, it's anti-blackness, it's, and so on and so on. So I had dozens of these sort of titles of what are the components of white supremacy. When I began to roll out the challenge, to actually facilitate and deliver the challenge, it was really important for me to lay it out in a sequential order that makes sense. There was an order. It wasn't haphazard. It wasn't accidental. Each day actually builds upon the previous day's work and the previous week's work. And so when we start with day one, week one, we're looking at what are the basics. When you come into this book, people are coming in at different levels. Some people have never done any kind of anti-racism work, don't have any understanding of any of these concepts, and really need that base understanding. But some people have been doing this work for a while. No matter where you're coming into this from, it's really important for us to start at the foundation level. And so we start with the basics. So the basics are, let me just get to my page. The basics are, I talk about for the first 7 days of this journey, we're going to be looking at these basic foundational aspects of white supremacy. These are terms you will have heard before. You will have heard the term white privilege. You will have heard the term white fragility. possibly tone policing. And then there will be some that you haven't heard of, things like white silence, white superiority, and white exceptionalism. In order to get into what people will often consider is real racism, sort of the stereotypes and the name calling and the anti-blackness, before we even get into any of that, we need a ground understanding, a foundational understanding of how white privilege and white supremacy manifests within you. And that's why we start with this week of the basics before we even start looking at how you view other races from a sort of stereotype point of view or an anti-blackness point of view. So for each day, I've kept a similar but sort of slightly, it's a sort of similar layout to the workbook, but made it more consistent than the workbook was. For each day, we have an opening quote. We'll have an explanation of what is this. So if we're looking at day one, I'll have a quote that explains something around white privilege. Day one is you and white privilege. Then I'll talk about what is white privilege. Then I go into how does white privilege show up? And then why do you need to look at white privilege? And then we'll have our reflection journaling prompts for that day. And I've kept that formula the same for each of the days so that you know what to expect and so that you understand not just what this thing is, but how does this particular thing contribute to white supremacy? Because oftentimes when we hear the term white supremacy, a lot of people tend to relegate it to the extremists, to the neo-Nazis, to the extreme right-wingers, and don't understand that unconscious behaviors and unconscious beliefs that they practice are also a part of white supremacy. And so I explain what the concept is. I explain how it shows up, really giving examples so that you can grasp them and so you can see, oh, yeah, I do that in my life, or I've definitely seen that. So how it shows up, why you need to look at it, you need to have an understanding of why. How does this contribute? And from that perspective, then you can go into the journaling prompts for that day. So that is week one. We're looking at the basics. We're looking at white privilege, white fragility, tone policing, white silence, white superiority, white exceptionalism. And then at the last day of each week, up until the last week, is a review day. So you're doing an overall review. What have you learned this week? As you've gone through each of the days of the challenge, what has come up? What connections have been made in your mind? What you'll begin to see is white supremacy is sort of this web, this sticky web where things are connected in all different kinds of ways. We are looking at them as individual topics, but they cross over and they connect to one another. And what I have seen from people who have done both the challenge and the workbook is that as they do each day and each day builds upon each of the other days, they begin to see how this sticky web operates, and they begin to see it's not just am I a good person or am I a bad person? Am I a racist or am I not a racist? But that these behaviors are cross-linked and that there is a reason why they contribute to white supremacy. There's a reason why you practice them, even if it's unconsciously. And there's a way in which to stop doing so and to therefore be able to help dismantle white supremacy. So what I'm going to do now is I promised you that I would read you a little bit from the book. And for those of you who are pre-ordering the audiobook, I'm really happy. It was a dream come true for me that I got to read the book itself. So you'll be hearing my voice reading the audiobook, but I'm going to give you a little taster now. So the day that I decided to read about is white fragility, which is day 2. And the section that I'm reading from is why do you need to look at white fragility? So very briefly, white fragility was a term coined by Robin DiAngelo, who actually wrote the foreword to this book as well. She defines white fragility as a state in which even a minimum amount of racial stress becomes intolerable, triggering a range of defensive moves. So basically what she's speaking to is what many of us Black, Indigenous people of color are aware of, which is for people who hold white privilege and white people who don't know how to have conversations around race because they haven't had to. Having privilege means you don't have to have these conversations. When you are brought into these conversations, a trigger of, how does she describe it? A range of defensive moves is triggered. You might shut down, you might fight back. It's sort of the freeze, flight, or fight. I hope I got them all right. So that's what happens with white fragility. You know, you either shut down or you begin to attack back. And that is also part of white supremacy. So why do you need to look at white fragility? The word fragile is so apt as it describes an inability to withhold even the slightest pressure. Conversations around race and white supremacy are by their very nature uncomfortable. They come loaded with historical and present-day events and experiences that have caused pain, shame, and inequality. White fragility prevents you from having a conversation about racism without falling apart. If you cannot talk about racism, especially about the ways in which you have been unintentionally complicit in racism, then you will never be able to go beyond a mere superficial understanding of racism. This superficial binary understanding looks like this. Racist people equals bad people. Not racist people equals good people. I want to be a good person, so I cannot be associated with racism. This desire to be seen as good by yourself and by others prevents you from looking at the ways you unknowingly participate in and are part of white supremacy because of your white privilege. Your desire to be seen as good can actually prevent you from doing good, because if you do not see yourself as part of the problem, you cannot be a part of the solution. White fragility makes you dangerous to BIPOC, so BIPOC, Black people, Indigenous people, and people of color. When conversations of racism arise, you jump into defense mode, making you unable to really hear and understand the pain and challenges of BIPOC. The focus becomes to defend the self and really one's white privilege and white supremacy as a whole, rather than opening yourself up to an experience of becoming consciously aware of what your privilege has protected you from. White fragility thus makes you an unreliable ally to BIPOC because you do not have the resiliency needed to talk about racism. When your BIPOC coworker, friend, or family member shares with you an experience of racism they have been through, you are unable to hear them. You try to convince them that they are imagining it or are reading too much into the situation, that they have misunderstood what was said or done, that it was not about race, but about something else. Rather than allowing yourself to really hear what they are going through and ask with empathy and compassion how you can support them, you minimize their experiences and you let them know, without saying it, that you are not a safe white person for them to be around. As much as you think you have convinced yourself and them with these explanations, all you have really done is make clear your level of white fragility around racial conversations. Going a step further, white fragility, which is really fear, can quickly turn into active harm. Like going into fight or flight mode, your white fragility can cause you to run away, shut down like a deer in headlights, or become aggressive, violent, and harmful to BIPOC by striking back. In a conversation on racism with a white woman who was a spiritual life coach, she angrily snapped back at me, "Well, what about Black supremacy?" This was a woman who prided herself on being about love and light. But under pressure of being called out for unintentional white supremacy, she struck back. She later came back and apologized, realizing that it was her fragility that she had spoken out from. So that's week 1. I'll be back in a few days to talk you through week 2. Make sure that you pre-order the book. It's really helpful to me as an author. If you pre-order the book, you can do so at meandwhitesupremacybook.com. Please help me to make this book as big as possible, to reach as many people as possible, to get on all the lists, and to really help make a huge impact in the world. Thank you so much.